the April 23rd meeting of the school board, a special meeting for a budget work session. We'll ask Mrs. Overby to do the roll call.
Chairman Offer.
Here.
Dr. Ball.
Here.
Ms. Flanagan.
Here.
Ms. Maddox.
Here.
Mr. Milner.
Here.
Dr. Stanbaugh.
Here.
And Mr. Zager.
Here.
You have been given a copy of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting this evening? So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. All in favor, please raise your hand. Dr. Cotton is going to discuss with us some adjustments to the school budget for next year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank each of you for being here. I know we scheduled this last week because we did need to have a meeting in place to make any adjustments that we had to make based on anticipated funding from the county. Based on the information that I received at the public hearing and the previous meetings, I'm not hearing that there are any changes proposed to the $300,000 additional funding over level funding. So that meant that we had to find an additional about $360,000 to take out of the budget. So just as a reminder, I wanted to show you what we had in the budget previously. Some of these items, as you know, came from many conversations with advisory groups, teacher advisory, classified advisory, student advisory. School board members also provided feedback at one of our board meetings. You'll see the technology position, the curriculum specialist on the same schedule, salary adjustment for teachers, which we've talked about. We estimated that to be close to $500,000 to do that. We also have the adjustment for special ed paraprofessionals, the math specialists, which we desperately need to address our mathematics scores across the county, the restoration of ed and rec funds to the schools, as well as the restoration of capital outlay to the schools. And as a reminder, we did cut some of that in the previous year to find additional funding, so we wanted to restore that back to the schools in this FY 2016 budget. We also had salary adjustments for certain positions, a little over approximately $104,000, and the bulk of that really is technology positions and bus mechanics. And we also had in there the increase for substitute bus drivers and aides. We talked about how important that was to recruit our future bus drivers, and we felt like we were having trouble with that with the daily rate we had in place. So we're recommending an increase for that. Something that I do want to point out to you that you've already seen, and this is not news to you, but we have been really looking at salaries, and we've been looking at salaries for all employee groups, not just teachers, but all employee groups. In particular, when we did the VAST study a couple years ago, we received some input that our teacher salary scale was above market for the most part until you get to around year 15, 16. We're the blue line there with our current salary structure for teachers, and then you see that we fall behind from that point forward when you look at comparing it to the market. And this is a comparison with local school divisions in our area, and I think you all have seen that because before. I know you've seen this before because this is where we started this conversation. So in the proposal that VAST recommended from our study, they recommended that we make some adjustments to the top half of the scale, and that's where we got to adjusting steps 14 through 27 so that we can make those adjustments. And that was our recommendation in the original proposal, and you can see that at every point on that scale, for the most part, you see that we're slightly above or very close to that green line, but we certainly wanted to make those adjustments so that not only can we recruit highly qualified teachers, but we want to retain them as well. So that was the purpose of going with that approach. The unfortunate thing with the additional funds that we requested not being granted, that means that the largest item that we have in our budget is roughly $500,000 for the scale adjustment that we've talked about. So we already looked at what that would look like if we did half of that, and you can see that it still improves from where we are, but it's not where we want to be, but it certainly is an improvement over where we are today. So part of what I'm recommending in the budget adjustment is that we adjust half of that amount, and that will put us in this position here. I do want to point something else out to you, and I'll say it now because this graph is helpful. We are planning on doing a 1.5% adjustment in January of 2016. If you remember, we are getting that funding from the state. And once we apply that 1.5 amount, then this looks a little better. Again, it's not where we want it to be, but it is much closer. We certainly narrowed that gap. And what's important to note is that we need to continue to address this in future budget years, as we've discussed. So, just as a reminder, we did ask for an additional $660,000 approximately from the county. We have been told that we're receiving $300,000 additional. So, in order to balance the budget, we had to find the $360,000 amount from the proposed budget. So, what my goal is this evening to do is to provide you with my recommendation, and certainly board members may have questions or concerns or thoughts to share at that point. I wanted to tell you that in this adjustment that I'm presenting to you this evening, the additional technology position is still there because that's required. We have to fill that technology position because that's tied to enrollment, and in order to meet the standards of quality or SOQ guidelines, we have to add that position. So that does stay in this proposal. We also have the curriculum specialist on the same scale. As we've talked about before, some of our curriculum specialists are working 10 months on a teacher scale versus 12 months, and many of them are needed throughout the year to complete a lot of our instructional initiatives and planning for curriculum, and frankly, many of them are working above and beyond their schedule to make that happen. And as you all know, we've made a lot of great progress with curriculum and instruction, and we want to see that continue. The next item is our adjustment for the special ed paraprofessionals. That's a 5% increase that we want to keep in this budget proposal. By the way, the items that are in bold are the items that have changed. So you'll see, obviously, the salary adjustment there in bold is the one that I'm recommending doing half of that versus the full amount that we initially proposed. The special ed paraprofessionals did not come out of the salary study. That actually came out of our review of salaries. So we wanted to make those adjustments because we felt that was important because of the hard work that our special ed paraprofessionals do each and every day. The math specialist position is out because we were unable to fund that this year. I will tell you that we've had some initial conversations about a consultant that we've been working with mathematics, and we're looking at working with this consultant to work with lead teachers to really focus on mathematics this year, and that money can come out of the Harvest Foundation for Professional Development. So we are coming up with not ideal. We would have fared much better with a curriculum specialist focusing on mathematics, but we are prepared to come up with another plan for that. We also had to cut the restoration of ed and rec funds for schools. That's roughly $30,000. I know this was a priority for school board members because when we did our assessment, that came to the top of your list. What I'm recommending that we do is that we use year-end funds to allow the schools to purchase as much of their supplies as they can prior to the start of next school year. So what that means is a lot of the paper and supplies and crayons and so forth, they can go ahead and purchase before the end of the year because those are one-time purchases. And they can have those ready in stock for next year so that what they have left in that budget for next year, they can apply to other things like workbooks and expendables and some of the other things that they need to purchase at the school level. We feel that we can handle this with year-end funds. If for some reason we cannot do that, then the next phase of that would be if our enrollment is higher than we anticipate, we'll do what we did this year, where we added money to that line item for our schools when we had an increase in funding. So I wanted you to know what we're doing with that. We kept in the capital outlay restoration of $19,500 there to schools. We also kept in the salary adjustment for those below market positions. As you all know, the bulk of this is going to be technology positions and bus mechanics. Those are included in those adjustments. Both of those are 10% increases. If you remember from the vast salary study, they were severely below market. They were at the top of the list, below market positions. So the benefit of doing this is it allows us to address some of the other employees within our school division. We also have included the increased pay for substitute bus drivers. We're not showing an amount there because that's more of a savings a decrease in savings that we're going to have, but we felt that was important to keep in the budget. Just for calculation purposes, we've shown you our total original recommendations, the amount that we have left after making those cuts that I've highlighted, and then that gives us roughly $360,000, which is the amount that we needed to fund in order to address the shortfall that we've discussed already. For your information, I want to point out that you have these updated numbers in your board packet, the recommended budget with the new date of April 23rd. This has also been posted online as well, but you'll see this information clearly reflects the adjustments that have been made in my proposal. I'd also like to point out, if you take a look at you have a one-page handout that was provided for you, and this is the teacher salary scale that we're proposing for 2015-16. What I want to show you is the proposed scale in that column, the first column to the right, was based on the VAS salary study recommendation. If we do the half adjustment, then you'll see in that final column, that's what the adjustment looks like. So what you're going to see is an adjustment ranging from 0.58% all the way up to almost 4% across these steps. So I just wanted you to see a comparison of where we started and where we are this evening. And Madam Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
For the record, Dr. Cotton, I'm concerned about the ed and recreation funds. You're going to make sure that's taken care of with end of the year funds. In case of emergency, we don't have it all out. End of the year funds, you're going to get it out of the next year's budget when our enrollment is higher than projected.
Yes, sir. That's our plan, and we want to make sure that they have the supplies they need. Currently in our planning, we are working on a supply bid for the end of the year, and we're going to try to get them to purchase as much of those one-time supply items, which is a good use of that money, it's one-time money, to go ahead and get the supplies they need, because we don't want to have school starting the year with not enough paper or materials or supplies. So that's on our priority list for the end of the year funds.
The 1.5% raise that will come on into effect in January will be factored into next year's, will be budgeted at that amount for next year.
Yes, sir. We will make the adjustment in January. Then it will be factored into our budget process moving forward, because once you make the adjustment, you have to continue that moving forward. We will have more conversations about that in the fall, about how we're going to apply that 1.5%. Our intent is to apply it to everybody, to apply the 1.5% to everyone, keeping in mind that we made the adjustment to the top of the scale, and then we can do 1.5 across the teacher scale, but also all employee groups. That's what we're budgeting for this time. But again, I'll have to present that to the board for final approval. I just want you to know that that's coming.
Are there other questions for Dr. Cotton at this time?
It looks like us doing some preliminary mathematics and that. If you look at step 14, and what let's see. Let's take another one. increase would not put them where they would have been if they'd been getting annual step increases, but it will move them a little bit closer to that.
It will, in most cases, you know, the increase is higher than a step increase would be. One of the things I want to point out to you is, and again, that's one step increase, you know, we're starting with that's fine. But I want to point out to you that one of the interesting things that's starting to happen is we have quite a divide from step 28, actually step 27 to step 28. And there's quite a gap there, but one of the things you're noticing is with these adjustments, that gap starts to narrow a little bit more, which is really the way it should be. It shouldn't be quite that much of a difference going from one step to another. So we also, when we look at the 1.5% increase, we will need to talk about the top of the scale as well, people that are on step, or the off step listed here, because the board may want to discuss a one-time flat rate increase or something to that effect. But that's something we can talk about a little bit later.
Well, I think we're doing the best we can. We are eliminating some of these inequities that we run into, which is progress, raising the substitute bus drivers, so we can keep plenty of substitute bus drivers. Like you said, that's where we get some of our main bus drivers from. We're getting most of our teachers' steps, salary steps, near fair market value, so I think we're making some progress. And it's good to point out that we are planning on giving a 1.5% raise to all employees come January the 1st. We are planning on doing it.
Yes, that's where we are. Of course, the board will have final approval
Right.
at that time, but that's where we're working toward. And I just also want to point out that in your packet, you see not only the teacher salary adjustments, but you also will see the adjustments for the special education paraprofessionals,
Right.
as well as the bus mechanics as well. So if anyone wants to look at those salary adjustments, they're all included.
This figure for the base salary, 2014-15, that doesn't include the 1.5% raise.
You're exactly right. The 1.5 is not included yet because we're starting the year, if you approve, with this salary scale. But when January comes, we'll have the adjustment made, and then that will be the amount moving forward, or it could be different depending on what we can do within that budgetary process. Because we really need to, what I like about this is we are addressing inequities rather than just doing across the board raises, which we've been doing for the last several years because that's all we've been able to do. But the good news is we're starting to address some of these issues so that they don't continue to be compounded as we move forward.
Now, the 1.5 in January is from what?
From the General Assembly approved an additional increase
Okay.
for 1.5%, and you know that it did not include enough to provide the raise for everybody. It only included the SOQ funded positions. So by starting on a flexible date in January, we can use that amount to finish out the year and then just start the next budget process planning for that amount. Because remember, we got this late in the process, which is a good thing, but as you and the board have talked about, and I've talked about over the past couple of years, we don't like to do only SOQ funded positions, so that's why we're waiting for January so that we can do it across the board.
We're sure that whatever adjustment is made to this base salary now in January, which would be 1.5, it's not going to make that figure higher than this current figure. Because it looks like for that first step, it might.
Well, keep in mind, at this point in time, you're not looking at that adjustment yet. That's going to be handled separately. That's not reflected in this budget. So that will be reflected. That's going to represent additional funding on top of this budget that we'll get to apply after January.
I was just looking at step 14 there, because 1.5 of that
Oh, I see.
would bring it up higher than what
You're right.
Donald Cole is.
You're right.
Make sure that
In some cases it would. to the whole scale. So that's why I feel comfortable applying the 1.5 after this adjustment, so that we don't lose ground on our top half of the scale.
So your amended revised budget, is that the magic number, $73,611,051? Is that the magic number? Looking down this paper, if this is right.
Yes, you're looking at the fiscal impact.
Total expenditures, so I'm looking at. Is that the right number? So that is your revised amended budget, Dr. Cotton, you
Yes.
recommended to us?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Well, Madam Chairman, I'll offer a motion that we approve Dr. Cotton's revised amended budget, total of $73,611,051.
It has been moved, is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the revised school budget as presented by Dr. Cotton. Is there any discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of approving the revised school budget, please raise your hand.
I'd like to add a comment, when the discussion's over, but in appreciation for what Dr. Cotton and his staff have done, been able to save some things here that we were very instrumental in wanting to put in there, and y'all have done that even though we didn't have all the money, including what Mr. Sayers said.
But the important thing to note is we'll continue to address salaries. You remember we had a multi-year approach. We're a little behind right now because of what occurred, but we'll continue to focus on salaries moving forward. We had a 3-year to 4-year plan, and we'll continue to bring that to the board as we talk about salaries moving forward.
I think the one important thing that the graph showed there, one of our concerns is losing experienced teachers to surrounding communities. With the half step, it makes us at least comparable, and so there wouldn't be, for most of those higher steps, there wouldn't be a significant advantage financially for an experienced teacher to leave us and go to surrounding community, which again is one of our main concerns. Obviously, would like to be above scale the whole way, but at least there's not the incentive to go somewhere else for an experienced teacher, or at least not somewhere else specializing us.
There are many things that contribute to why people stay in an organization, but definitely salaries are a big one when they're looking. And as you heard, we do a good job with recruiting, but the worst thing that happens is we train them up for 10 to 15 years and then they leave us. And we've had comments where other school divisions have said, thank you for training them up because they're top notch when they leave Henry County. So we like to think that we prepare them well.
Are there matters from the board to be discussed this evening?
Dr. Cotton, SOL tests start in elementary schools next week, you said?
Yes, sir. We start on
Good
Wednesday,
gracious.
and the elementary schools, and the following week, our middle schools start testing. And I want to make sure that you all are aware that, which I'm sure I've shared with you already, that expedited retakes are allowable starting this year for grades 3 through 8. In the past, it was only for high schools. And that's new, and that's one of the recommendations out of our SOL Innovation Committee. That's actually been put in place this year. So our students, with parent permission, who fail an SOL test have the option to retake that test. So that's going to be a little adjustment for us this year, but we're making preparations to implement that.
And I think that I read somewhere that we have to have parents' permission
You're right.
in grades 3 through 8, so we need to ask Mr. Collins to try to help us out and get the word out. It won't help in grades 3 through 8, they don't need it to graduate, but it will sure help Henry County and our competing against other jurisdictions in the economic development if our test scores are a little bit better, SOL scores.
It will, and I've been around to several schools over the past weeks, and the students are excited. They want to do well. They're motivated. They expect to pass. And when I talk to students, they tell me we're going to pass, and that's their plan. So I believe that our students are going to be motivated to retake
If not, I'll entertain a